And luckily, we do plug the basket and we get just enough gas to divert basically through Qatar into Bahrain and land in Bahrain. It was scary. We landed with like low fuel lights and everything. We got there. We knew we would have enough gas to get there, but we still landed with low fuel lights and everything. When we got there, the airfield had basically been like woken up. And so the lights on the airfield were not on. And it was really difficult to find it. And we have low fuel and all this kind of stuff. Luckily, as we get to about 3 miles from the field, the lights come on. And with this particular failure, I would not have the ability to steer the nose wheel on the airplane. So there was a little bit of a crosswind. So I had to land on one side of the runway, knowing that the crosswind was going to push us to the other side as we rolled down the runway. And luckily, it all worked out. You know, I held the controls in the direction of the crosswind, and it all worked out, and we stopped.
Welcome to 99 Humans. My name is Jeff Lakusta, curious coach and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, striving to understand how little things generate big impact.
And I'm Nadia Carta, tech executive and lifestyle coach with a mission to transform lives and corporations by kindling hearts to generate a zeal for life.
Each week, we investigate stories about the human side of leadership to re-energize your spirit and help you become a stronger leader.
Because the reality is that leadership is messy, goofy, challenging, but always human.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to another episode of 99 Humans. This is a very special episode because my brother Patrick is joining us to talk about some of his incredible leadership experience. So Patrick, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is really cool. I'm glad we can make this happen.
I'll do a quick intro, which could be very long. It could be, an entire lifetime's worth of introduction. But Patrick and I were actually just together in California at his change of command ceremony, which was an incredible moment of pride for me as a brother, just to watch Patrick take over command of a Joint Strike Fighter Squadron. So I want to hear more about that. But even before that, Patrick is in the Navy. He does fly jets. He has one of the coolest jobs that you could ever imagine existing on planet Earth. And he went to the Naval Academy. He also went to the Air Force Academy to get his master's, which was close to Notre Dame. So we got to see each other while he was there, which was very fun. We're from Flower Mound, Texas. He's married, living in California with 2 amazing kids who are my nieces and nephew. And his wonderful wife, Amanda, is a surgeon. So that's a quick introduction. But Patrick, tell us what the change of command ceremony is and what you're doing right now.
Well, thank you. That was great. I don't have much left to say, but so the change of command ceremony is something that is it's a long-standing tradition for the military, and the Navy especially is huge on tradition and holding that linked to our heritage and all of our customs and things like that. So the point of the ceremony is to make a really big deal out of the transfer of the responsibility from the outgoing commander to the incoming commander. And all of the ceremony, which is only about an hour long, it boils down to one moment where the outgoing commander says, I'm ready to be relieved. And the incoming commander says, I relieve you. And that is the moment where the responsibility transfers. The reason we make such a big deal out of it is we do it in front of the unit that's being commanded. So all of, in this case, my sailors know in that moment, okay, that was the guy, this is now the guy. And there's no question about who's in charge, who has the decision authority or anything like that. So that's kind of why we give it the gravity we give it. There's lots of different ways to do it. My favorite way is the way that we got to do it, which is incorporating the jets and doing that transfer of command actually airborne by changing who is leading the formation as we fly right over the hangar really low. in front of all of the guests and the squadron
Like a
itself.
personal air
And
show for us who were there.
it was really cool.
It was really cool. It was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Well, so I have so many thoughts about this. Number one, next time you gotta invite me. I'm gonna fly all over just to see this.
Done.
And number two, this is like in the movies. This is like a Top Gun situation. Like Tom Cruise maybe was attending. I'm not American. Everything I know about the military, I know from the movies that I
Oh.
watched as a kid, and I still watch, like Virgin River, anyone, with all the
Yes.
veterans. But then number three, and maybe this is where I get to what pertains to this podcast. I wish we had something like that in the corporation, so that people wouldn't have any question about authority or who has the responsibility. I mean, this sounds super smart to me.
Yeah, I do. I think there is a lot of value in having that clear delineation of who's in charge. And I think, if you take a squadron as kind of the unit that we're talking about, which is about 250 to 300 people, depending on how big the squadron is, there is a layer of middle management called department heads. And in my last tour flying out here, which was 2018 to 2020, that's the position that I was filling. I was a department head, and you rotate through management of the different departments in the squadron when you're doing that. So as you rotate, about every 10 to 12 months, there's an overlap period where we call it turnover. It's really just like learning your next job, and the guy or gal who's departing that job is teaching you. We don't have a moment really where we do this like immediate transfer of responsibility, or at least we don't make it as clear. And that does sometimes result in a little bit of confusion about who has the responsibility and who should the chain of command go to for decisions and questions and things like that. So I think the value of making a big deal out of this like one moment of transfer is really a good thing. I agree.
Jeff, do you remember? I don't remember if it was you or somebody that says clarity is kind. Yeah. This seems very clear.
The military seems to do a lot of that, though I am sure it still struggles with people who maybe have a hard time leaving their old job, even though there was the moment, trying to stay involved. Patrick, have you ever seen where that is difficult and you really do have to, like, hey, now this break has happened. You need to move on to your next thing?
Yes, definitely. I think as a result of that, so there's a couple different aspects to that we could unpack a little bit. I think in the past, we didn't do, or we must have not done, I really don't know, a good job of having the outgoing commander sort of depart the premises, leave the building and not be present for people to go to anymore. That has now resulted in a culture that feels awkward, but the outgoing commander like leaves and kind of doesn't come back. And there's the incoming commander tradition is that we throw a party the night of for the unit and our guests. And even though I have a real friendship with the guy who was the previous commander, he, according to the custom, he could not come to my party, which is kind of funny because I would have loved to have him there. We're great friends. And, but that clear transfer of, okay, now this is the guy and the outgoing guy is not in the picture anymore. That prevents, I think, it feels a little extreme, but I understand where it comes from in that it prevents that confusion that we were talking about. Like if he's still hanging around, maybe it makes me uncomfortable if there were some changes I wanted to make or something I didn't like about the way he was doing it. Maybe I'm uncomfortable doing that when he's still hanging around. You don't want anybody still leaning on the guy or gal who just departed. So I think that's one way we handle that. The other way that is a result of that is the guy or gal who was in command is immediately cut off. And I think that is very hard. And I think that's an aspect that we don't we're learning to talk about, as I think, in our country, we're doing a good job about starting to address mental health and stuff like that. But that is an aspect for guys or girls who have been, the central focus of a pretty large organization and needed 24 hours a day. And suddenly they're not needed by that organization anymore. And the cutoff is, like we talked about, pretty severe or clear. And that can be really hard for folks. And so that's another aspect to it. So, hopefully they're moving on to something they're really excited about next, or another position where they're needed. The military is also really good about that, moving into your next role pretty quickly because we need you there. And so that helps with that for sure.
In fact, I was wondering what happens when you change these positions, right? Like, and also what triggers the change in position? Is it because somebody gets promoted and they have different needs, or is it because, I don't know, somebody wants to move on, retire? Like, what are the underlying reasons for these switches?
That's a great question. It really is. It's timing, and you can kind of project forward. So, in this specific case, the commander of a Navy squadron. Not every service does it the same way, but the commander of a Navy squadron is the commander for. The plan is for 15 months. You can go -1 or +3 without any formal action by the Navy. And that depends on your boss, the commander of the air wing, and when they want to have you leave the squadron based on your events going on with the air wing and things like that. Or if there's a need, there can be formal personnel action to extend you or shorten your tour if needed. If you go upstream from that, why does the timing matter? There is, I think, a valuable principle, but there are some negatives associated with it. So we try to rotate everybody through as many experiences as possible in order to create really well-informed major commanders, which means the guys who are commanding air wings moving up to admiral or general, and flag officers. So flag means an admiral or a general. That's all that means. There's only so much time to create somebody who's really well-rounded and has seen enough different aspects of the military, not just naval aviation, but the entire military, to command it. And so everything we do is based on these milestones, is what we call them, where, we need you to be a department head. We need you to be a commanding officer of a squadron. We need you to be a commander of an air wing. And in between those jobs, we send you out to the joint military. So maybe to work with the Air Force or the Marine Corps or the Army, and gain experience with them in some way, so that by the time you're really in command of a joint unit, you know how they operate, you know what they do, and how to bring the entire joint force to bear. The downside of that is we move a lot. And that is one of the chief complaints that people have. I think one of the ones I hear most often, and it's not a universal truth. Some people wind up being able to homestead and stay in one place and just do different jobs at that one place. But the majority of us move around every 2.5 years or so. And that is hard. That's hard on a family and all that kind of stuff. But the reason is to get all this experience, so that we have well-informed leaders at the top.
So this moment of you taking command is, from my perspective, and I think you share this, I mean, this is a pinnacle moment of your career. This is, to your point, gaining experience inside of naval aviation and outside of, you were just based in Germany, which led to a lot of fun trips for us to visit you in Stuttgart and to do some fun things like Oktoberfest. But to your point,
yes,
you're gaining experience outside of what would be considered maybe like your core role, your core job, that you are a pilot, but you weren't flying in Germany, at least. And I think what's incredible about this is you have now gathered so much experience inside of that core flying job and outside of at tours like Stuttgart that you're able to be a commanding officer. But along that way, you've also accumulated a ton of stories. And I've had the privilege of hearing so many of these from, what's I love about any community, right? Nadia, you and I can sit down and talk about Google and advertising and technology and all that in a language that most people wouldn't be able to understand because it's acronym filled and, relationships and all of that.
Yes.
And I just spent a week with Patrick and all of his old friends where they're speaking their own language about aviation and the Navy. And it's equally as fun to watch people in whatever kind of universe they're in. But I'd love, Patrick, for you to share, maybe one of these stories along the way of a time when leadership and the experience that you were gathering was particularly human, because the stakes are certainly a lot higher, either when you're in the air or you're dealing with military operations than maybe your average corporate job stakes are. But I think the human nature of leadership is something that at least our hypothesis is that they're similar. So I'm curious what you think, and maybe tell us one of these stories here.
Absolutely. So I think when we talked, one of the phrases that you used was to talk about a time when leadership was kind of messy. And there is definitely a period where leadership felt messy to me because it was a scenario that I was the least prepared for, if possible. I had the least natural knowledge of how to handle it and the least training of how to handle it. And I think leadership is a little bit of what you're born with and a little bit of what you can learn. I don't think there's only born leaders. I do think you can teach leadership. But certainly we're all born with different qualities that we bring to the table. It was in 2020. I was on deployment. I know, shocker. And I hate to cherry pick a COVID story here because everybody's got a COVID story, right? If you think about a period that was the most messy in your last 10 years, it was probably during COVID, but certainly that was true for me. And
sorry, Patrick, for me that I don't understand this language. When you say I was on deployment, so
Sure.
What do you mean by that?
So I was out on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, an aircraft carrier, and we had deployed from the West Coast. So my whole air wing, which is, let me think about it. I think it's 60 plus, 70 plus aircraft embarked on the aircraft carrier. So plus about 4,000 sailors on the aircraft carrier. So there's 5,000 of us plus on this aircraft carrier. And we were operating over in the Western Pacific. And we got COVID on the ship. And it was in the news. And we pulled into Guam.
This was terrifying from land because we're just reading stories about the USS Enterprise getting COVID, knowing Patrick's on there.
Wait, I remember this episode.
Yeah,
Is
the Theodore Roosevelt. Yeah. Yeah, it was scary. I'm not going to lie. It was scary and a little bit crazy. And just like it was for everybody, I think we were having the same experience. We were just maybe a little bit on the leading edge of it from the perspective of the United States. I think we had it before it was really widely present in the US, but not far ahead because it spread so quickly. So long story, but I'll jump to the point, which is I find myself with a positive COVID result and placed in basically like a quarantine facility, which was the base gym on the naval base on Guam. And it was a difficult scenario for a lot of reasons that are obvious and a lot of reasons that maybe are less obvious. But we didn't know much about the disease at that time. We had lost a sailor, which was really horrible. One of our sailors passed away from COVID. We had other sailors that were in intensive care and things like that. So it was scary. And we were all in this quarantine facility together. I think we had about 140 people in this particular facility. And I found myself as one of the senior most people in the facility at the beginning, which was not a place that you would expect to find yourself in, like a medical quarantine facility, isolated. There was support from the outside world, obviously from the Navy and from the base, but people weren't coming in. There were hazmat suits. They would sort of leave food outside for us, and then we'd have to wait till they were gone, and then we could go outside, get the food, and bring it right back in. We couldn't go outside at first, other than to get the food that they left for us. And this was you can imagine what this is like from your own perspective, but now being a leader in that situation and trying to help the folks under your leadership understand what's going on, what you should do every day. How long is this going to be? What do they need? What care do they need? And how do you get that care? Wow, this was like incredibly messy and difficult, and making it up on the fly all around. I mean, up and down the chain of command, we were all making it up on the fly. Give
us
to
an
everybody's
example
credit,
of the kind of stuff you were like. What were you doing as the leader? What would you advocate for?
Sure. Our first step was to ask if we could get outside. So at first we weren't allowed to go outside, and that was really how could they control where people would go? There are people who live on that base, and they didn't want us to integrate with that population, understandably, stuff like that. But as it became clear that this was going to be a while, we had all these sailors in the gym, and they had the gym roped off to in areas where we couldn't go use the equipment in the gym. There was really not a way to exercise or anything for these folks. And so the first fight was to get permission to go outside. And that took a little while. Eventually there was sort of a front yard out in front of the gym that they caution taped off. They set up all these construction fences to keep people away. And then we were allowed to go outside to PT. And that was really valuable, like really valuable. I think everybody in that gym was working out twice a day. Fortunately, we were able to get another thing is there was not really good cell phone signal there at all. And so the USO, and we didn't have blankets at first either. So the USO was really great. The military provided cots, but the USO got us blankets. They bought like every blanket on the base and out in town, and then Wi-Fi pucks. So we were able to get some Wi-Fi pucks. Not many. I think we had 5 that could connect to 5 different devices each. So not enough. However, the sailors were super smart and creative, and were able to utilize hotspots and stuff like that. And so, a lot of folks had brought little gaming systems or laptops, even though we at first thought it was going to be a short time when we got off the ship. So they had some entertainment. They'd work out a couple of times a day. And that was kind of our existence. And what we eventually implemented to sort of give ourselves some structure, a purpose every day was, and this sounds very military, and it is, but it worked. We gave ourselves a schedule. So we had like a reveille, a time to wake up where we would turn all the lights on and everything. And then we would do a morning muster, which means everybody would go to their like group captain basically and check in. And we would all, stand there until we got 100% accountability of every person. And then we would pass any words, any information that we had gained overnight to everybody. And we did those in the morning and in the evening, and people had responsibilities. So there was no outside support in the building. So we had to like clean the bathrooms and do all that kind of stuff. Find out who was going to handle the trash and get the trash out to the dumpster they had provided outside and stuff like that. So assigning that structure was really helpful, but we didn't have it at first. And we were I would say we were all floundering a little bit until we implemented that structure. And that all of a sudden gave us a little bit of the order and purpose that we were used to. And it calmed, I think, a lot of people's nerves. Fast forward a little bit, and to get out of the facility, you had to have 2 negative COVID tests in a row. And that's a whole nother story, but that was difficult to achieve. Even if you'd had COVID, a month ago or 2 months ago, in my case, you might have a negative COVID test one day, but then the next day, as we know, as you shed the virus, as we know now, we didn't know it then, you might have a positive COVID test the next day. So to get 2 in a row is very difficult.
Sleeping 2 feet from someone who's COVID positive.
Right. The cots are literally touching each other, and I have best friends. I have new best friends from that experience that will be some of my best COVID friends forever, because we were cot mates. As the guys and girls ahead of me in sort of seniority at the facility test out of the facility, I suddenly find myself the senior guy at the facility. And by this point, we were maybe 40 days into it, 45 days into it, and the frustration level was really high all around. And one of the things that I had been sort of naturally gravitating toward in my style as a leader was being transparent about the fact that I was frustrated, about the fact that I didn't like some of the things that were happening, or the things that I thought we should be doing. And I was transparent about that. And I had a core kind of group around me of more senior folks that I felt like I could be 100% open with. But even to the entire facility, I tried my best to be honest with them and not hide much. One of the things that made this so messy and was really challenging for me was a colleague and kind of a peer, a little bit less senior than me, but he was a peer. He talked to me several times over the course of me being the senior guy and said he thought that I was being too transparent. And that was really hard. It certainly gave me pause, which it should when someone you trust says something like that. And he thought I should project more of an air of confidence that, things were being taken care of and it was all going to be fine. And we should just tell the folks in the facility that everything was going to be okay and not to worry about it. And at the top level, everything was going to be okay. I mean, we knew it would be okay, but, in the medium term, in the near term, there were so many unknowns and it was a real roller coaster. I certainly thought about what he was saying and it gave me pause, and maybe because it was in the back of my mind, I tempered it a little bit, but I remember making kind of a conscious decision to be thankful for what he was saying, but to kind of stick to my natural style that came to me. And I thought there was value in that and to continue the way that I'd been doing it, which, I think, at least for me, the people I lead in any organization can immediately tell when I'm faking it. I don't have a good poker face. And I think if you want to lead a team, being real and being genuine and being honest about the experience that they are having is important to bond with them. I don't think they're going to trust you. They're not going to come to you with their problems if they feel like you're just another one of, the man or another representative of the bureaucracy that's going to tell them to just be quiet and do what they're told. And that is not, I don't think that is what the military wants from us. That's certainly not what the military trains us to be. And it's also not my natural style. And so I made kind of a conscious decision to continue in the manner I was, to be honest with them and open with them. And that was really hard. Years later, that colleague told me that he understood better than what I was doing and that he appreciated it. And that meant a lot to me too, because I don't think he was necessarily wrong. I think it was a different leadership style, but it wouldn't have worked for me to just pretend like, everybody trust everything's going to be fine. Why are you so worried? the bond, one of my favorite moments of that craziness was the bond that I feel like I built with the folks in that facility, because I was open and transparent with them, led me to understand what they needed most, which was something to be happy about, something to get excited about. And in the back of the facility, there were sand volleyball courts, but the whole time we had not had access to the equipment. So every day, there was the base CO or XO, or there was a 1-star admiral regional commander who would, one of them would ask us what we needed and swing by, and we would talk at a distance. And it became clear to me that I needed a volleyball, or I needed, 8 volleyballs. And they were able to get that for us, and they brought it to us. And I put together a volleyball tournament for the folks in the facility. And that tournament is actually like a real bright spot in my entire career. So from the ashes of this horrible experience, we were able to create something that's actually one of my favorite memories from my entire career in the Navy, because, the sailors are anywhere from 18 to 35, 40 years old. And all of us were there together. There were ship sailors, there were squadron sailors, there were sailors from every aspect of that deployment, all in this facility together, who didn't know each other at first, but became bonded through this experience. And we did this volleyball tournament, and it was the best. Somebody had brought a Bluetooth speaker so we could play music. We were outside, happy. By that point, thank God, everybody was pretty healthy, and we were just waiting for, to stop shedding the virus to get out of the facility. And just smiles. For the first time, I actually have a little video that I took on my phone where I was like, look, they're smiling. And it turned into something really great. And I think that was because I could trace that back to being transparent with them about what was happening, what should be happening but wasn't, and how I felt about it. And the bond that I had with them, the fact that they trusted me to represent them and to know them personally as individuals, I think I can link it directly back to that.
Wow, I could listen for these stories for hours. You might have to stay with us a little bit longer. There's uh, there's so many learnings that I'm like, can we just send all of our leaders to you for like a boot camp of a couple of weeks so that they can learn how to behave under crisis? I'm like, corporations should be learning. I mean, I'm even thinking we should have programs where we do exchange programs. Like we send you a bunch of Googlers directors and you
Sure.
keep them in the Navy for and then you give them back to us. That would be awesome. But I want to go. Wouldn't it be nice? I want to go somewhere if you're comfortable, because I'm hearing you saying all of these amazing things. And in the back of my head, I can't really move away from how this man became the man that it is. Like when I think the type of struggles that you might be facing, and when I think about the level of, composure and the level of, I don't know, resilience, I mean, the level of emotional stability and regulation that you need to perform your job, I'm like, how on earth do you become like that? And I would love for you if you could give us some advice to, normal people like we are, in saying, you guys, like, these are the 5 things that you gotta be doing in your life to get. I mean, I'm not gonna go and dug up holes in the snow like you did with Jeff. That was a little amazing and probably
You don't want to go to Alaska
unachievable.
with us?
Maybe, I
I don't
don't
know if I
know.
want to go again either, Nadia. That's okay.
Oh,
But maybe we keep that as if you really, really want to be the best, you come to Alaska. But no, I mean, seriously, because I can't wrap my head about how somebody becomes like you, because you sound incredible, and your ability to endure fatigue and stress and pressure. Like, I get annoyed if somebody sends me a nasty email. So
so do I. Yeah. Well, absolute. Thank you first. Really nice things to say, and it's funny because, you all get used to the environment you operate in or you exist in. And I feel like I have bad days 100% where I don't do all of the wonderful things that you just said, and I could do better. But in general, I do think like leadership in a crisis is maybe a strength, or at least something that I aspire to be a strength. And I think a lot of my peers, other CEOs, or people who have done that would have that as a strength that they either claim or aspire to as well. I think maybe if I could distill one thing that helps with that, like when it all feels like it's going wrong, how do you keep a cool head and find a path out of it or forward? I think you could call it prioritization. You could call it finding the information or the details that matter, that really matter most, and focusing on those things. So an actually really easy example that I think anybody could relate to, like Jeff said, I have 2 kids. They're 9 and 7, and so much fun. But you can imagine there's craziness involved with that in the house, and there's bumps and bruises and falls and all of those things. So with my son in particular, bumps and bruises are a part of life, as they are with a lot of boys or any kids. So when he falls and is really screaming, that induces a reaction as a parent of like panic. What is wrong with my kid? What's happening? And I think that's one time where I feel this strength come through, is like arriving and immediately focusing on what matters. And I think like EMTs are really good at this too. What is the actual injury and what care does that injury require? And then how do I comfort this person? And then after all of that is taken care of, then I'll worry about how did this happen? Why there's a tendency maybe sometimes if they were not following the rules to get angry. But you want to avoid all of that stuff and just focus on what matters first. It's easy to get overwhelmed in the details in any situation. You project that into a workplace. There are so many details that you could get overwhelmed by that flood any crisis type of situation. But really focusing on, okay, what are the key points of this situation that have to change? And what are the things that we need to do to change them? And then once we get that in motion, then we can worry about the surrounding information of how did we get here? How do we prevent this from happening again? Do we need to worry about, public facing attention, that kind of stuff? I think that is a strength that, maybe there's a little bit of personality, but I think the Navy did a really great job through flight training for me of developing that into a real skill that I feel like I can use intentionally and like actually view it as a tool that I have that I can exercise or not exercise. And I do think flight training was a great way to build that skill. So I guess maybe it would be helpful to talk about what about flight training did that. And that is, yeah.
I mean, I can stay here the whole morning. This is amazing.
Well, so you could boil it down
Sorry,
to...
I have to spend a weekend with your brother.
Let's do it.
Come on out. Absolutely. Yes. I think you could boil it down to practicing crisis. I think that's what the Navy and the military in flight training and really all aspects of the military are really good at practicing crisis. So it has many names, but specifically to talk about flight training, there's all kinds of things that can break with an airplane. And we have procedures that we have to memorize called emergency procedures for the things that you have to do immediately or as fast as reasonable to get that airplane back safely on the ground somewhere. And if you don't do those things, you could worsen the situation. So we work really hard to memorize these things early as we transition through different aircraft and flight training. Each one has different procedures, so you have to rememorize everything. And then you go into simulators and, they give you scenarios where you're just flying along, and then those emergencies happen and they give them to you in the simulator, and you have to practice. There's warning tones and loud things, and the air traffic control is talking to you, and maybe your wingman is talking to you. Maybe you're in the middle of a huge exercise and you have one of these emergencies happen. And the complexity of the situation grows more and more during flight training, and you practice handling the emergency situation and drowning out all of the superfluous stuff, the warning tones and the ATC. I don't need to talk to ATC right now. What I need to do right now is get breathing oxygen again, or shut that motor off that's on fire, or whatever. And then when I've got the situation under control, then I can talk to ATC. And that's that prioritization that I think we get really good at, because you have to do it really fast and maybe with incomplete information. But that enables you to keep a cool head and find a path through the crisis that's happening in that moment.
Can you tell the story of when you used that training and ended up landing somewhere unexpectedly?
Sure. I have several. Let's see. Are you talking about the one in the Middle East?
I think that's pretty entertaining, but
Sure. Okay. So I was on my first deployment as a young pilot out in the Arabian Gulf, and
Wait, how old were you? Define young.
I think I must have been 25, 24, 25.
which is about as
25.
young as you can fly a jet, right? Because it's a lot of years of working up to being able to take off and land on a boat, basically.
Yes, you're right. So I had gone to that year of grad school after the
In the
academy.
middle of the ocean, basically.
Yeah.
That's what you're
In
saying.
the middle of the ocean.
land
Absolutely.
yourself rather than in the ocean.
When Patrick
Yeah.
was landing on a different aircraft carrier, I asked him, "What are you most nervous about?" And I think you said something like, "The angle of the landing pad is 1 degree different than what I trained on." And he's like, "But if you think about it, the boat's going so fast. I'm going really fast. 1 degree of difference is, it's hurtling down the ocean at a completely different speed than I'm used to." I'm like, "Oh, wow. Yeah, that's nerve-wracking."
Yeah, I think I was getting ready to go to Ford when we were doing the very first testing on Ford that we were talking about that. Yeah. So long story short, it was, as all good flying stories are, it was at night during a sandstorm in the Gulf, and the visibility was really not great, but we were out in the holding pattern getting ready to land, and we came down from holding. Everything was fine. And by the end of your flight, you're relatively low on gas. We do a really good job of keeping just the right amount of gas to have a couple of tries at landing if we need it. But you can't have too much gas because you can't be too heavy to land on the ship. So we're relatively low on gas, and we come down, get ready to land, and I lower the landing gear, and I think it was my nose landing gear did not give me a good indication that it was down. And so we wave off, which means you just go around, you abort the landing attempt. And we start troubleshooting, see if we can get another aircraft to join on us to look at our landing gear. But it's night, and they were not able to confirm. They could see that it was down, but we were not able to confirm if it was locked. So as we're going through all of this, we're using gas. And if you're slow and your landing gear is down, you burn gas more often or faster. You burn gas faster. So we get pretty low on gas. So they send us a tanker. We have aerial refueling tankers that are other fighters configured with a tank that in a hose that extends out the back of the jet. And then I can extend my refueling probe and plug that probe into the basket that the other jet is trailing and get gas from that other airplane. So they send us one of those, and the pod on that other airplane breaks, and we're not able to get gas from them. Yeah. So that's not great. Now we're pretty low on gas. We're not out in the middle of the ocean because we're in the Gulf, but diverts are pretty far. Like divert airfield's a place to go. And so they launch a second tanker off the deck, which again, we do a great job of like preparing for crisis. There was another tanker ready to go. So they launched that one. But tanking in a slow, dirty configuration with your landing gear down is really hard because the basket is in the wake of the jet in front of you. So it's just like swirling like this. It's moving around like this. And I remember my Wizzo, who is a more senior guy, who I love and respect a lot.
Wizzo
One of the only things he said to me that night. Sorry, a Wizzo, a weapons systems officer, the aviators who sit in the back seat of two-seat cockpits and operate the weapons systems. One of the only things he said to me that night was, as we're getting ready to plug the basket and it's swirling around like this, he just goes, "Really need you here right now, man." And luckily we do plug the basket and we get just enough gas to divert basically through Qatar into Bahrain and land in Bahrain. It was scary. We landed with like low fuel lights and everything. We got there. We knew we would have enough gas to get there, but we still landed with low fuel lights and everything. When we got there, the airfield had basically been like woken up. And so the lights on the airfield were not on, and it was really difficult to find it. And we have low fuel and all this kind of stuff. Luckily, as we get to about 3 miles from the field, the lights come on. And with this particular failure, I would not have the ability to steer the nose wheel on the airplane. So there was a little bit of a crosswind. So I had to land on one side of the runway, knowing that the crosswind was going to push us to the other side as we rolled down the runway. And luckily it all worked out. I held the controls in the direction of the crosswind, and it all worked out, and we stopped. And there was a P3 unit that was there, a different, like a large maritime patrol aircraft. So they had 4 engines, and they were stationed there for their deployment. Their guys came out. Well, the Bahrainis came out first with a pickup truck and started to try to tow us off the runway, but they could only do it in reverse to fit under the nose of the aircraft. And so that's they're towing us in reverse, and the P3 guys couldn't fit their tractor under the nose, so they actually went with a buzzsaw and cut the top off their tractor, and then came out with their tractor and hooked up and towed us off the runway. And so that was, yeah. But I mean, I think some of the same leadership skills or practicing in a crisis, leadership maybe isn't intuitive there. There's only 2 of us in the cockpit, but you also remember that there are all these people around you trying to help. Some of the help is great, and when you need it, some of the help is not helpful, or maybe it's coming at an unhelpful time. And the ability to communicate that or just absorb the information that's helpful at that moment is one of those leadership skills that I think helps in a crisis. You are basically leading all of those external organizations as the guy or gal in the airplane at that moment. So
how many minutes was all of this action?
that whole episode probably lasted like 35 minutes.
The longest,
maybe 40
minutes.
Oh yeah, definitely. When we landed, they gave us 1 beer and a Snickers bar to share with each other. So that was great. I love that. I still have pictures of us with the beer and the Snickers bar. Oh yeah.
And I know we're at time, and your time is so precious, but I do have so many other questions. Would you want your kids to be in the military?
Just like any parent, I want them to be whatever they want to be. I want them to chase whatever dreams they naturally have. And I don't want to push them to be what I am or to be what my wife Amanda is or anything like that. But I do talk to them about the military. And as they grow, I want to be completely open and honest with them about the goods and the bads. I believe that there are far more goods than there are bads. And I think that it is a really noble profession, even if you do it for a short time, that act of service. And it's not the only way to serve either. Really, I think if you want to collect the water bill for your local community, that is service to your community. Learning how the government works, learning why this contract between all of us is so important and requires investment by each individual citizen to make it work, and not just sitting back and letting other people do the work, but being willing to do it yourself is really important. The military comes with tons of services and benefits. It is a great way, if you're not sure what you want to do, it is a great way to go to college. It is a great way to learn a skill set that you can apply. You can get certified as an aircraft mechanic, which is an extremely expensive certification to get on the outside. You can get certified as an aircraft mechanic while you're in the military. And we have a program where the civilian agencies recognize your certification, and you go right out of the military and you can go into very lucrative work as an aircraft mechanic, even if you've done only 4 or 6 years of service in the Navy. That's one small example. But I think, gosh, I could go on forever. But I think one of the other really important things that I value is I get to interact daily with every part of America. They are all here in my squadron. Every walk of life in the United States is represented in the Navy. We have folks immigrating to the country and gaining their citizenship through service in the military. So we get to celebrate naturalization ceremonies with people. How cool is that to get to be a part of that? I value that a lot, and I think it is a great way to grow as an American, to live and work and invest in something with your fellow Americans from all walks of life on a daily basis for as long as you choose to serve. I know it's made me a better person and it's made me a better American to do that and to have that experience. And then the last thing I'll say is I think the movie representations of us are obviously what's out there. And, I watch all of them too. I think they're great. I love them. But what they don't capture is...
Wait, do you have the same dress that the guy from Virgin River got married in?
Which one is that from Virgin River? I can't picture. Is it the white one?
Because the one with the blue thingy and everything, if you have it, you'll have to send us a picture.
Okay. All right. Deal.
We'll use it for what to post.
Deal. But yeah, just the last thing I'll say is I think the movies don't capture how educated a force we are. We're often depicted as robots, and that is not what the U.S. military is. Thank God. We are extremely well educated. We are encouraged to think deeply and philosophically and ethically, and we train that at all levels. And the level of autonomy and decision making changes as you're in the military. One of the things that we teach, and I really do think is true, is that in order to be a good leader, you first have to be a good follower. So learning followership is something that we value a lot at an entry level, learning how to follow. But then simultaneously, as you learn to follow, we are teaching you leadership lessons in how to behave as a leader. And, some are good and some are bad. But I think we do a great job of, we require education. By the time you advance to a senior rank, you are required to have master's degrees and things like that. But we encourage it greatly starting at a very young age, and we want a thinking force. And I think that is ultimately one of the greatest strengths of the U.S. military is we are trained and expected to think about what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we do it.
So, Patrick, to Nadia's point, we are reaching the end here, and we always end with the same question, but I'm going to put a slight twist on it because somehow in all the family and fun and friends that we were just together for, we didn't get a chance to talk about this. But the question we usually ask podcast guests is, what advice can you leave us with? But at your first speech to attendees at your, change of command, but really to your own squadron as well, who was there, you talked about a triangle that was really the foundation of your leadership philosophy, your approach to command. And so
Yeah.
I'd love if you could share with us that triangle and how you got there and why those things are so important to you as you think about leading other people.
That's awesome. So that triangle it came to be over a couple of years. I started thinking about it in my pre-CO training that the Navy put me through back in 2023. And so I had kind of a rough sketch. One of the parts of the triangle, I wasn't even sure, it was just blank. I just felt like there should be something there. I could feel it, but I couldn't see it, So it materialized over the course of my tour as the executive officer. So I was the executive officer for a year and a half prior to becoming the commanding officer. And what it has become is mission at the top, and then family, sailor. So mission, family, sailor. And in the middle is integrity. And so what I said at the change of command was, our mission as a combat squadron is to fight and win in combat. And we have different focus areas driving toward that mission at different times. Right now, our focus area is to build our combat readiness as we have completed now our transition from F-18 Super Hornets to the F-35. We're now we're a full F-35 squadron. And now we are getting ready for our deployment next year. So that's our mission right now, is to get ready for deployment. Family, to me, is, I know it's not in vogue right now to talk about your workplace as a family. I understand that. But I give myself a little bit of flexibility with that because in the military, it's different. We are responsible for all aspects of that individual's life because they signed up to give their life to us. And we are the custodians of their life, and we have to be responsible in doing that. And so I do think that we get to call ourselves a family at work. We go away for long, long periods of time and live away from our families with only each other. So I consider us I call us the Sidewinder family. That's our mascot, is the Sidewinder. But I also want to acknowledge each sailor has family. So that part of the triangle, family, is about us as a unit and us as an extended family. I have a responsibility as the skipper to communicate to their families when we're away and let the families know what's happening, what they can expect for their sons or daughters or spouses or brothers or sisters or whatever. And then the other vertex is sailor. So focusing on each individual sailor and what do they need to be fulfilled? How can I help them with their goals, both personal and professional? One of the things that the previous commander and I'm going to continue doing is when people check into our command, I want them to establish a couple of goals for themselves at work and in their personal life. Do you want to buy a house? Do you want to buy a car? We have resources that we can use to help you with that and teach. And the other aspect of sailor is resilience. So learning to deal with adversity, learning what resources we have that we can provide to you. How do you stay resilient in the face of really challenging events and things that you have to do, being challenged at your workplace on a daily basis? How do you stay resilient? And then integrity. Integrity is a word that materialized to me because I realized I kept talking about it to my kids. And I realized that it is probably one of the most important values to me. And so it became natural for me to put that in the middle. And what I mean when I say integrity is at every level of the squadron, from me down to the newest check-in, do the right thing even when no one is looking. And if every person is doing the right thing, then we are all rowing in the same direction. We are all going to help each other. We are going to accomplish our mission successfully and even excel because they know my intent. I don't have to be there looking over their shoulder. They know what I want. And if they're doing the right thing, then even if I'm not there, they're moving the mission forward. They're pushing us towards success. And so that's the triangle. It's newly implemented. We'll see how it goes, but I have a good feeling about it. I think it came naturally. And so that's it. Mission, family, sailor with integrity at the center.
Well, number one, was it recorded? Number two, you need stickers now of these
Right?
triangles.
I
We
know.
can
Totally.
I know. It was recorded. AJ recorded it actually, so it was great.
So you gotta send it around. I want to watch it. It must be very
That's really cool.
emotional. Oh my God, we might need like a season 2 just basically with you for all the 99s. I feel that when you will decide to retire, you'll have to have your own podcast and books and all things.
Thank you,
Such a
Nadia.
wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. Well,
My God.
I admire you guys so much for tackling this. This is a huge project that you've taken on and really cool. I think it's really cool. I love listening to the podcasts and hearing everybody's stories. I mean, so many awesome guests and stories that y'all have put together. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you. We're close to the end. Jeff, we will have to celebrate very soon.
Absolutely.
Okay, I don't know how to say goodbye because I'm not ready. Jeff, you'll have to do this. This was one of the
So
best
awesome.
ones.
Thank you, Patrick, for making time, especially so early in the morning before you head into the squadron. And I know it's your kids' last day, Ethan and Amelia's last day of school. So you've got some fun this weekend coming up. But hope you really enjoy it and appreciate you sharing some of your wisdom here. I get the benefit of talking to you more regularly, but it's fun to do it like this. You know, we talk about different things. So thank you.
This is really cool.
Honestly, you are the first one that we wanted. We waited 4 years. You get a better comeback sooner than other 4 years.
I'm so sorry. I'm really glad that we made this work. This was a really cool experience, and I'm excited to get to do it. This is great.
Not that you have other priorities in life like saving nations and flying planes.
I don't do that part.
Podcast all day, yeah.
Just the flying of planes, yeah.
All right,
Well,
we are
thank
all
you
good.
guys.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Oh.
Such a cool human being. My brother is, I think, I just respect him so much for, you know, we joked at Change of Command because he used to have a toy airport when he was like, I don't know, maybe 5 years old, something like that. And he wanted to be a pilot when he was a little baby. And now he is in command of a whole squadron of airplanes doing this thing. The grit, the determination, the focus. He's quite a cool person.
So this was his dream his whole life.
Which, you know, I have grandparents who were in the military, but really this is not a familial thing. And it is for some folks, some friends that he has, you know, their dads or whatever were in aviation. But yeah, this was a home cooked dream, I would say.
Wow, we gotta really have an episode to talk about dreams that are born when you're young. It's because this is a lot. As you said, like when you decide that this is a dream you're going for. For me, this is like when you decide you want to be a doctor, like it's one of those professions, like you said, to be in service, but that they really become your life. Like this is not, I'm going to do a 9 to 5 and then disconnect and go meditate. This is like your existence.
Yeah. And even to get to do the thing, I mean, you're not doing it till, what did you say, 25? Holy cow, it's a lot of preparation to get there.
Oh my God. Oh, wow. Such a cool brother
He's
you have.
cool. Yes, very, very lucky. Well, Nadia, as always, what are you taking away from that conversation?
The whole episode. Oh my God, it's so hard to answer this question today. Oof. I'm deciding if I want to go with something more deep. Because he said like so many deep things, like you gotta be doing the right thing even when nobody's watching, like things like that. But then if I go with, our life, even our corporate life, there was, one in particular that I've never reflected on. Like he said some that I had reflected in the past, but there was one that new that I was like, this is like a spark for me. And it's when he said, in order to be a good leader, you need to be a good
Mm.
follower. And I will say, I was I was probably I could have done a better job of being a good follower in my life. Let's do it this way. I remember when I was, like a level 3 or a level 4, and I was, not happy with leadership. Like, not always I put my best foot forward to be a good follower when I was not happy with the leadership that was in charge at that moment. But I assume that when you're in the military, you don't have a say into what is the leadership that is coming. And you got to follow, like either you like it or not. And for me, this is a very hard pillow to
Mm.
swallow. I mean, you and I know all of the other
Oh yeah.
experiences that happened. And this gave me, I mean, I need Patrick back now to say, Patrick, how do you become a good follower when you dislike the leadership? Like, what do you do? Because, I mean, in his field, it's not that you can change teams or go to another department. Like, I guess you're going to have to suck it up in a
Yep.
way. So I need an episode for that.
I think it's fascinating because as a leader, right, it seems so nice to repeat to people who might not be good followers to be like, you'll be a leader one day, but be a good. But the challenge that you're raising, where of course, just like Patrick said, if you disagree with the ethical direction of the leadership, if you think decisions are going to risk lives unnecessarily, you would say something. You don't just swallow the pill and follow. But that isn't every day in a military life, just like it isn't any day really in a normal corporate life, which does offer a really interesting perspective of, okay, what can I learn as a follower? How do I help my leader be successful? If we were all really focused on that, what might be possible, even if it's much to the chagrin of, me making someone I don't like successful? It's still fascinating for the mission. Maybe it's better.
Exactly. Exactly. He takes that decision to say, even if I don't like this person, I'm going to make whatever possible for this to work and see. Like, it's such an interesting
Mm,
perspective.
yeah,
I feel we could do a whole episode
agreed.
about this.
That's a good one.
What about
Well,
you?
there's lots that I take away from that conversation. I think maybe one that might be, I'm curious if it's as obvious to you, Nadia, as it is to me from everything I know about Patrick. But what I think makes him so effective in his job, and maybe not so surprising that he's wildly successful at what he's doing, is that he just loves it. I feel like when I
Mm.
sit down for an hour and hear him talk about what he does, even though it is challenging and, they move all over and he's gone from his family and all of that, he still at the core just loves it. And those stories radiate that passion. And I think and believe to my core that that's a huge, part of the wind in his career sails that is making him successful, because I do think it's a lot harder to be good at what you do if you don't actually enjoy it. And boy, are we constantly around people who are incredibly capable and smart and talented and read all the right books and know all the right, but just don't love it. And so their heart's not in it. And it is a huge difference maker to the quality of work that's happening and to the types of people who want to listen to what you have to say and follow your leadership. And I think it's pretty cool just to sit down and see, as we've had with, some other guests as well, but in a special way for my brother, I love just seeing him enjoy what he does, and he's great at it. And I think those things are connected.
I mean, certainly you can say everything except that he doesn't love it. I mean, you can see it in his face, in his voice. I mean, he's generally, this was his destiny, his dharma. I don't know how to say it. It is totally. I mean, I don't see any other way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not seeing your kids for how long, when he goes, how long he goes
Like
for?
9 months.
Like months? 9 months. You know what I mean? Like, deciding that you're gonna miss all of these things. You gotta love it. There's no other way. And I assume that when you go, you don't even know if you're gonna come
Mm.
back. I don't know. Like, oh, there's nothing else but that you're just in love with
You
it.
love it. You
And
feel like it's important. I know he carries that sense of I'm really serving, and he mentioned that, and that's pretty neat to, when you
Yeah.
say thank you for your service to a veteran, it hits differently.
It's true.
Talking to somebody like him, you're like, wow, yeah, you really are sacrificing a lot, and making a big impact. So yes, thank you.
Mhm. And honestly, full circle. Remember Sandra?
Yes.
So they work with the Navy account. Maybe we should all get
Do
the
the
three of them
connect.
together one day.
Good networking.
Oh, this was so nice. Well, I don't know. It's giving me a little bit of now feelings, when I think about his kids and he's going away. Oh, it's
Yeah.
you gotta really write a book about your
Yeah.
brother.
He needs to write his own
His
book, I
biography.
think. Absolutely. He's got a lot to say. But
A lot to say. Well, good to see you, Jeff. And thank you for hunting your brother down and getting it on the show. And we have only a few episodes left. So everybody continues give us 5 stars. And
until next time, you're right. Not many left, but this is a fun way to start to land the plane, maybe, to use that analogy.
we gotta land the plane, that's for sure.
Bye,
Bye,
Nadia.
Jeff.